Well, today, more trade talks between the United States and China happening in Stockholm as officials try and reach an agreement before the August 12th deadline. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer will meet with the Chinese premier as Beijing seeks reduction of the Trump tariffs and tech export controls. Beijing and Washington reaching temporary deals in May and in June, largely over rare earth minerals. But experts say the Stockholm talks could help facilitate setting up a meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping that could happen this fall. President commenting on the progress of these negotiations. Watch.
We just struck a deal with Japan, as you know, and we're very close to a deal with China. We really sort of made a deal with China, but we'll see how that goes. Mostly I'm just going to charge tariffs, and you know, it's not a deal per se, but people are going to pay tariffs, and we're doing them at the low end, not the high end, because we don't want to hurt anybody. And pretty well, but you and I both figured this is really the biggest trading partnership in the world, so we should give it a shot, right?
Joining me now is Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, your reaction to the next piece of the tariff puzzle, and that is this U.S. China deal. You heard the president. Your reaction?
Well, first of all, in general, an extension would help China more than it help us, because it means they continue their predatory trade practices and their criminal theft of U.S. intellectual property. But in this particular case, an extension might help us. And the reason is, as we extend this trade deadline with China, we're stitching up trade deals with the rest of the world. In other words, we're tying the world to us. This EU deal is so critically important because China couldn't get an EU trade deal. So really what we're having right now is the Chinese, which normally like to stall, I think stalling might not be in their interest. So this is good news for the United States. And by the way, Cheryl, this $750 billion buy of U.S. energy is really good, because it means that Europe is being weaned off of Russian gas. It'll buy U.S. gas, and that means less money for Vladimir Putin to prosecute his war in Ukraine.
Right. We brought that up earlier on in the hour, Gordon. It is very important, as in particular, as you see, you know, this China-Russia relationship. And, you know, also, too, I think in the broader terms, just to have the trade deal signed with the Europeans means that China can no longer, encroach as they were, in particular when it came to the automobile industry. In Europe, they can, you know, they had made some inroads, and now maybe this is good news, and it'll go the other way. I do want to ask you about, there's a Reuters report this morning saying that there's a bipartisan push by 3 U.S. senators to introduce bills with regards to these trade relations to do some influence. One bill, this is according to Reuters, is co-sponsored by John Cornyn of Texas, would deny entry to the U.S. or any former Chinese government officials who were deemed to have engaged in any abuse of the Uyghurs. So it's about Uyghur abuse. Another one from John Curtis of Utah is with regards to Taiwan, support of Taiwan. So there's trade, and then there's national security. And that seems to be kind of what these senators are now going to discuss, because they're still going to be in session through the end of this week, Gordon.
Yeah, well, the important thing here is that we can't forget that China is more than just a strategic competitor. They call us an enemy, and we need to understand China's assault on our country. And in general, it's important for us to cut off the flow of money and technology to China so that it can't use it against us. And when you talk about the Uyghurs, we're a party to the Genocide Convention of 1948, which requires us to prevent and to punish acts of genocide. And China is committing genocide in Xinjiang against the Uyghurs and other Turkic minorities. So this is really important when we think about the overall arc of our relationship with China. It's not just trade.
Yeah, well, and again, this is a bipartisan. I mean, one thing that we have seen in a bipartisan way is the concerns about national security and China, not just the economic story, but the human story of what the Chinese have been doing for decades. They're now releasing their own AI action plan at Shanghai's World Artificial Intelligence Conference, and this is just days after President Trump unveiled our version to keep America first in technology. So China's premier warned against a, quote, technological monopoly, where AI will become an exclusive game for a small number of countries. We know very well, Gordon, that the Chinese were pushing ahead, in particular with the release of DeepSeek, to overtake the United States when it comes to AI. It is a race. I would argue it is still a race. Your reaction to this latest move by them?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is still a race. But when China complains about a monopoly, what it's complaining about is a U.S. monopoly. And that really tells us something about Chinese propaganda, which over the last several months has been touting not only DeepSeek, but also China's technology. And what we're seeing here is that when they're complaining about our lead, what they're really saying is that China's propaganda is false. And also, you know, as we look at all of this arc and trajectory, the United States is doing very, very well in AI. So let's not let the Chinese use international organizations, which is what they want to set up, in order to restrain America as we progress. So let's not let China do this, because really what we need to do is make sure that we allow American innovators to innovate.
Well, certainly, you know, I've got Greg Farinello on set with me. And Greg, I just want to get your take on this, because obviously the AI trade has been what has powered the markets in the tech sector. So this is very important.
For sure. I mean, it is probably one of the biggest issues in the marketplace right now. But I think, you know, if you look at what the president is saying, what you look at what the administration is saying, you know, they recognize the importance of AI going forward. They are making it a very, very high priority. They realize we have competition with China, but we're going to move this thing forward. So this idea of American exceptionalism being done, I think, is just very, very misguided.
Well, no, especially under the Trump administration when it comes to technology. Gordon, real quick before you go, a U.S. ambassador is urging all countries, but specifically Beijing, to, quote, stop fueling Russia's aggression in its war in Ukraine. The ambassador did slam China's exports of dual-use goods to the Kremlin, says they contribute to their industrial base there. That's enabling drone and missile attacks on Ukraine. Of course, China denies this accusation. Gordon, before you go, final thought.
Well, we should complain about dual use, but we should also complain about China providing weapons to Russia, and also the Chinese soldiers at the front in Ukraine. There are mercenaries who could not have gone there without the approval of the Ministry of State Security, but there are also formal People's Liberation Army officers at the front. So China's support for Russia is all in, and we need to be clear about this, and we haven't been. And if we are clear, then maybe we can stop this Chinese support for Russia. But until we are willing to make those rhetorical points, it just shows that we are not at a point where we feel that we can challenge the Chinese. That's a message of weakness, and that's not good, because China amplifies that to the rest of the world.
Gordon Chang, it's always great to speak with you. And obviously, we're going to be reaching back out as this trade negotiation ramps up today in Stockholm. Gordon, thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.